I love that you share that example because it is something that I think so many people can relate to, myself included. And I used to do it all the time with Justin, perceiving what I thought that he needed because I actually feel uncomfortable. I'm assuming he feels uncomfortable because I feel uncomfortable. And that's like that enmeshment piece, right? Where it's like, I can't see myself as separate from you. I don't know where like I end and you begin. So my discomfort means it like automatically equals that you're also in discomfort.
By default.
By default. Welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast, where we explore the power of healing the mother wound by bringing our awareness to codependency in our relationships. Whether you're dealing with codependency in a romantic relationship, with family members, or in friendships, this podcast provides a brave and supportive space for exploring your challenges and finding practical solutions. I'm your host, Alyssa, and I'm here to share my own personal journey with codependency and the valuable tools that I've learned along the way. Tap into my world and support the podcast by joining the Codependency Alchemy Substack community. By subscribing, you will receive weekly newsletters with shadow work prompts, masterclasses, and so much more to support you on your journey. And don't forget, if you would like to watch the video version of the podcast, you can check out the episodes on YouTube. Find links to all the things in the show notes or description box below. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Zander, and today we have my beloved friend, Erynn, with us. Erynn, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation that we're going to have today. I always love our chats and our talks, and I feel like it's going to get deep in the best of ways. So I'm freaking here for it.
Thank you so much for having me, sis. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So I would love to hear, like, what do you want to bring to the table today? What do you want to have a conversation around? What are you looking for support on?
I love all the curiosity in this question and the pieces that keep coming forward that I wanted to bring here and be with you in and around today are like how to resource ourselves in terms of getting reassurance when we are afraid of leaving ourselves or being left, and looking for that way to sit beside ourselves and be with ourselves. That's what's coming up.
Yeah, no, I super appreciate this. And I feel like it's so on point collectively because not only have I been supporting my clients on this this very conversation, like it's been coming up for me really, really intensely the past few days. And this conversation feels like a great integration of everything that I've kind of been uncovering even. So
I just got chills.
Yes, I love it because like it's the last episode I released was like, it's always fucking safety, right? Like it's always fucking safety. That's probably like the best title you're going to get out of me from a podcast episode, but it always comes back to that. And I think that safety really comes from us, standing hand in hand with ourselves as opposed to this like authoritative figure that's like talking down to you saying like you're doing it wrong or have you do it this way or better,
There's so much judgment. I almost put fear and shame together and made that a little hybrid word, which would be really fun, but we don't need to give any more energy to fear and shame. So what is coming forward is just how much shame comes up when we feel that pointed finger down towards ourselves or a representation of someone that told us there was something wrong about us or we were doing it wrong before. So how to unlearn that narrative and trust ourselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would love to share with you something that I've been moving through this week to support me in that shame voice.
Please.
Right. So the way that I started seeing it was like shame is almost like this and guilt. Like shame and guilt is almost like this very, very young part of us. Like the earliest memories, like 6-year-old self. So I kind of just see her as like, she's the one that wants the comfort food. She's the one that wants to binge watch TV. She's the one that just like wants to have some form of comfort and kind of grasps for those like maybe less than ideal habits that I personally have. And then what I started noticing, and I've had conversations with, I call her my angsty teen, my like angsty teenage self.
Insert eye roll. Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
have so much compassion for her. Yes.
For real. And so like this angsty teenage part of me, like when I try to comfort her in other ways, or actually even when I don't comfort my inner child in those ways, like maybe I do reach for the chocolate chip cookies, maybe I do binge watch, Love Island for the next 3 days, like maybe I do that, and then my angsty teen kind of comes in with like the finger pointing, like, see, you always do this, see, like you always blah blah blah, like you always eat the cookies, like look at you gain weight, look at you wasting time, look at you, you're lazy. And then it almost sends that inner child self back into that shame and guilt, and then I'm just fucking looping in it,
That spiral cycle.
intensely.
It's such a lonely cycle.
It's a lonely cycle, and it sucks sucks the life force out of you. Like it sucks the life force out of me to like continue looping in that. And so what I began to do a long time ago, and I don't feel like it's been so present until like this week, where it's like those dynamics are like playing out really loudly. I don't know. Are you feeling the same way of like,
Very similarly, yes,
yeah,
and have so much care for you. And yeah, that 6-year-old, 7-year-old self and the angsty teen, yes, they're resurfacing for more curiosity.
exactly. And so when I'm able to see it as like two different versions of myself, I like that. I feel like in and of itself, you're like, okay, how do we navigate that? See them as two different parts of yourself, because when they're two different parts of yourself, you get to then be the observer, right? It actually like separates you just enough to be like, oh, this part of me wants comfort. Oh, this part of me is like making me feel even more like shit.
And to allow some of those other C's come forward, like the compassion and care, and having ideas of how to provide that to both of those parts of yourself without abandoning you, like current self, and being that self energy. So I have a lot of care for both of those parts of you, and just admire your courage to, another C word, courage to step back and be able to observe, because that allows for a lot more self energy to come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're in that self energy, what I've noticed for myself is like I I think the natural inclination is to be like, no, we don't need the fast food. Like we have healthy food at home. And kind of overriding a little bit. And so what I've been doing is like, I hear you want the fast food. I hear you.
Acknowledgement. I love that.
Acknowledgement, validation, right? And that's been super helpful. And I literally had this conversation with myself in the car. I posted a TikTok video about it because I was like, this is what the healing journey looks like. It doesn't look like doing some woo-woo shit in a year, although it absolutely can. It absolutely can look like that. It's like on my way home from an appointment, trying to detour to go to fucking McDonald's instead of home.
I've been calling you from a place of anchoring in. Yes.
Exactly.
It's those moments in between. Yes.
It really is. It's those moments in the car. It's those moments in the shower. It's in those moments where it's like, do I really get up and go to the gym right now? Like when I really want to sit here and sleep more, like it's those moments. I had my like angsty teen that's like, I mean, both of them, my inner child that's like, go get the McNuggets, go get the McDonald's. And then my angsty teen's like, yeah, just go get them. Just go get them. And then my higher self being like, I ordered all the groceries this week for healthy options. Like I did all the legwork. Like there's nothing I really have to do. It's already made. And the angsty teen's like, You know what you do. You eat healthy and then you go back to pizza, you go back to quesadillas, you go back to the like shitty food, just antagonizing, like knows exactly what to do to like get under my skin. And I just kept saying like, I hear you. I hear you. You're right. You're right. I do go back to pizza. I do go back to quesadillas.
And there is a balance in that. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and acknowledging that we hear that part of ourselves that wants to lean into impulsivity almost gives ourselves, like that higher part of ourselves, permission to not have to battle with her, right? Because when we're in that dance, it's almost like a lose-lose rather than a win-win of this gets to be available to us. We step into the balance of having the groceries we ordered and meal prepping, but also having some fun fucking quesadillas sometimes
Totally.
and enjoying those without any punishment or punitivity.
Yeah. I think you like pointed out like such a key piece there, which is you're not battling, right? You're not fighting when you validate and say, you're right, I do get the chocolate chip cookies. I do that. It was like as soon as I said that in my head to that part of me, it was like she softened. You know, she's still loud, but she's softened.
I love that you brought that forward too, because what's been coming up for me is a shift in how to be with myself, right? And so how to acknowledge that without it being scary. When you shared that, it really transmuted, had a lot of neutral energy of, yeah, you want the cookie, you want the thing. I hear you, I see you, which is what so many of us that have experienced trauma, a lot of codependent behaviors, patterns, we're so used to that intricate dance that we don't know who we are aside from it or separate from it sometimes. So I really love how you brought forward like we can acknowledge that and also not give all of our power over.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because, like, that's the root of codependency itself, right? Is like the fear of being wrong, the fear of being unhealed, the fear of being bad. But when you say, like, you're right, I do that unhealed fucking thing, you know, or that, you know, whatever that pattern is, that thing that I've deemed as wrong or bad, I do that. It's like, oh shit. And like, I didn't cease to exist. I didn't spontaneously combust, which I think is the fear, you know, like I die when I'm bad, like, or if I'm wrong, I die.
Absolutely, that unaliving feeling is and wanting to be invisible and make yourself super small happens so fast, and being able to acknowledge that is such a beautiful point of like power and
Mm-hmm.
up to just divine alignment. And it also is available to us in moments that we are afraid. It's just harder to access when we are in that fight or flight response and our nervous system is activated.
Absolutely. And so that's what like I share that story to just show that it's affirmations and mantras are so freaking helpful. But sometimes it's also just like holding that part of you's hand and just saying like, I mean, this is what I ended up doing. So I had that whole dialogue back and forth with my angsty teen. And I was just like, you know, what if we just try? What if we just try to go home? What if we just make the healthy thing? Just see what happens. Just see how we feel afterwards because we both know how we feel after we eat McDonald's. Like we feel like crap and then we feel worse and then like we know it is not really serving us in the long term, right? Post the instant gratification. And so like what if, and this was what blew my mind because I didn't realize that this was what was under it, but it was like what if we actually end up proud of ourselves?
What if we
Like,
get to end up proud of ourselves?
yeah. What if we get to end up proud of ourselves and what if we feel better? What if we feel fucking great? And then I saw like, oh my gosh, that part of me protects me from feeling proud of myself and feeling great because I felt those at one time and that wasn't safe.
And then that shield went up with that part of you. That shield went up really strongly, and it's hard to even know how to put it down until you invite that part of you to say, what if we fucking love this? What
Yeah.
if it feels so much better to our body and it doesn't have to feel scary to receive nourishment from ourselves?
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that took a lot of beautiful courage, and it's the human shit that sometimes gets in the way, right, of this alignment that we experience. So to be able to have patience with ourselves and that humanity is invaluable.
It really is. It really is. So I think that, like, I know that's kind of like a very long story to like answer that question. Like, how do we hold ourselves like in those moments? It's by literally holding that part of you's hand and like having a conversation with her. Like I always invite my clients into like, what do you want to say to this part of you? What do you want her to know? And even just asking that question and prompting it like gets you into, okay, this is something, this is a part of me, but this isn't the entirety of who I am.
Right, and it doesn't have to be the loudest part of me right now running the show. Like I love that you were curious about what age she was, what she needed, what she wanted you to know. And what I found to be really powerful recently is, what if this part of me was allowed to have a different job?
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
if I redirected some of the energy that's been rigid in their shield holding and their protecting of me, and allowed them to put that down to give them a different job? Because we all parts of ourselves want to feel like we're a part of that system supporting the self energy. And sometimes who's running the show gets very loud.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to get creative of, okay, what other job do you need that will help you feel safe
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time help me be aligned with myself and not have you jumping in and running everything. You don't have to anymore.
Right, right. That's a huge piece. Like it served you at one point. Having gratitude, having space to acknowledge that this was a very wise part of you that created this pattern, this tendency. And it's like stuck, like I almost see it as like frozen in time. Like it's frozen in time in that scenario, in that situation where it needed to create that pattern, where it needed to build up the armor and have the sword. And now we're kind of just going back in time and like thawing it and being like, actually, I'm not 7.5 anymore in that classroom. I'm actually this many years old and I live in this house. Come with me. Whenever I do parts work, it's always so interesting because whenever I ask it, how old do you think I am? It doesn't think that I'm 30 something. It thinks I'm like, I'm the teenager or I'm the 6 year old. It thinks that I'm still that part of me that like at that age because it is literally frozen.
A lot of grief in that when you hear that answer back of, no, we're here, come. I love that invitation of, come with me. Let
Yep.
me show you this beautiful space we've created to live and exist and feel safe.
And I want to point out too, if you do that work, if you do meet that part of you, that young part of you, and you say, come with me, and they're hesitant, that's normal. That's normal, especially if it's like your first time or like your first handful of times. You know, it took me a lot of connecting and building a relationship with that part of me before she was like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Because she was so used to doing that specific job. And I do want to really emphasize that message to folks that will be hanging out with us, that it does not mean that you did anything wrong because that part of you is resistant or hesitant. It just means that you are incredibly strong and there are reasons why this was created. And it means that you're really human. So, welcome. We're here. We love you.
Exactly.
And there gets to be a different existence for you. One other thing I wanted to share before we move from that piece is, sometimes I'll visualize a bridge from like those big protector parts that come up. And I sometimes think about, okay, if it feels hard to leave the spot that you're in, can we visualize some kind of a bridge um, between here and some other places where parts are existing that you could visit or be at, where it doesn't feel like I'm yanking you from a specific situation, where you can come willingly, and that's honoring a lot of autonomy for that part too.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So powerful and so important. So you had mentioned like building safety for yourself. Like I'd love and like giving a new job. Like what are some new jobs that have surfaced for you?
Oh, I love that question. I think a lot of times when I was very young, it was there is a part of me whose huge job it was to manage, especially like adults or grown-ups emotions, and to be the one regulating with them or like taking the brunt energetically of some of that and filtering it through. I have found a lot of acceptance towards that part of myself who is very young, and I call her like the vibe police. She is like always assessing lighthouse vibes, like very much checking, looking. wanting to jump in, and support even when it's not something that has been asked of me or that there's space for. So I have met that part of me with a lot of curiosity and compassion. She's a doer. And so I find myself, yeah, really just sitting beside her and saying, like, it's okay for you not to be the doer, the fixer here. You get to observe and take in information, not from a place of like fear or stepping in, but from a place of being with, and being able to be with the people that are a part of my community now has been so healing for that part of me of um, I get to not jump in when I want to and trust that those relationships are strong and beautiful and get to reflect my light back to me, even when that part is like, are you sure? Are you sure about that? I don't know if you ever experienced that, of that questioning, and it's like, yeah, please don't make me waver right now. I'm
Mhm.
trying, girl. And that just shows me how much she wants to be sat with, right? How much she wants to be seen. So just hanging out with her and just saying, we got this. And the people around us have us too. So that's her new job, is to be able to know that if she's not stepping in, it's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sit with that discomfort.
Do you feel like that shows up as coming in to like fix and stuff? It's like, oh, there's a problem. Let me come in and fix. Or, oh, someone I love deeply is going through a hard time. Let me come in and fix.
Yes, it comes up a lot. um like an example of it was driving with one of my close friends and her missing a turn, and then me immediately getting ready to, this is a very like 3D human experience example of this, so I'll go with it. Me pulling up navigation immediately because I thought, oh, it might be scary for her to be driving and her to, so many metaphors that I could go with. I'm like metaphor queen over here, but there was so many things I wanted her to feel safe in, that I had, her back, that I was going to find the directions. And then we had this beautiful connection and moment where she was able to tell that part of me, I got this. I'm going to try to do it without that. And thank you. And I just want you to be here with me as we figure out how to get back on the highway.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I got the message of, oh, this job that she's coming forward to do is actually keeping me from feeling connected to someone that is a safe person to be with. Yes,
Mhm.
all of the snapping. Yes.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
was an example of, oh, a lot of compassion for her and how she comes forward, and allowing her to be a little bit wiggly, because a lot of times the word discomfort just has her dealing or digging her heels in.
Mhm.
Talk about angsty, right?
Yeah.
So many feelings of angst, but knowing that it's okay to feel wiggly.
Yeah.
You get to feel wiggly, and y'all are gonna make it off the freaking exit. It's not that big of a thing. It doesn't
Right.
have to be, right? So giving her permission to know you are still loved and lovable, even if you don't have the damn directions, because no one asked you to have the directions.
I think that's like the key piece about our perception, right? The perception is she needs the directions because she doesn't know where she's going before we even asked, how can I support you right now? I have learned that asking questions has brought me so much more connection and intimacy with my friends, with my partner, with my family, instead of going in and fixing it or like pulling up the navigation. I love that you share that example because it is something that I think so many people can relate to, myself included. And I used to do it all the time with Justin, perceiving what I thought that he needed because I actually feel uncomfortable. I'm assuming he feels uncomfortable because I feel uncomfortable. And that's like that enmeshment piece, right? Where it's like, I can't see myself as separate from you. I don't know where like I end and you begin. So my discomfort means it like automatically equals that you're also in discomfort
By default.
by default.
Right.
Right.
And that curiosity changes everything. That curiosity that leads to your question asking. And I've been, honored to be in close friendship with you, and been a recipient of those like curious questions that have just grown our relationships in so many beautiful ways, that if I share more about, I will definitely be shedding tears. So I'm going to pull that in and just honor it. And that curiosity allows us to know not only our other people in our community better, but ourselves better. And it allows us to be separate in a way that, again, going back to safety, feels safe, doesn't feel threatening, feels connective, and honoring of our own sovereign selves.
Absolutely. And I think that I I'm on this precipice now that I've learned recently, very recently, like in the last month, where I can actually see this trajectory throughout my life where like I felt safe in chaos, right? Like chaos felt safer for me because that's what I grew up in. And so beginning to see how that played out in all my, I think we were having this conversation the other day, like seeing how this played out in my relationships in my, my teens and my early 20s, and how as soon as a relationship was like really feeling safe and I was really feeling seen in it, I would leave. I would get attention from somebody else and I'd be like, I would just run to it. And this isn't just one time, like this is a pattern. Like every single relationship I had been in, which were long, like 4+ year long relationships in high school and college, even after college, and every single time I left, like I left the relationship for someone else. Like not even someone else that I ended up dating or anything, but it was just like, oh, this is too safe. Let me go to chaos. Let me go to chaos. And it was finally, now I feel like, okay, I'm over that. In a sense, I'm sure it will still lives alive and well inside of me in some variation. But now I feel like, okay, I've created enough safety and comfort. Being comfortable did not feel safe at first, but the last few years of my life, it's like, can I cultivate safety and comfort?
You can, you have, you will continue to. Yes, we will.
Yes.
Especially because you sharing about that, that seeking of the chaos really stood out to me as like that's what the reassurance was, that you were safe, because that's what was known as a sense of distorted safety in that way, with honoring all the things that happen and your understanding and compassion of them. Like we look for that reassurance in dysfunctional ways because that's what we know. And it takes a lot of courage to step forward and want to look for that reassurance in ourselves and our relationship with our ancestors, to call on any positive, resourced, safe person that you can call in and imagine sitting alongside you, offering you a warm cup of tea, offering you a cozy fucking blanket. We can imagine those people offering ourselves those things, or even entities, characters. Like we can imagine whoever feels like that comfort offering that to ourselves if it feels too uncomfortable to have a part of ourself offer it to us.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful tool to use. Yeah, I for some reason this book is like, it's like say this book in my head, so I'm just gonna say it. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks is a book that I felt like really gave me language and a way to see how how to hold safety and like all the good things at the same time. Like he refers to it as like an upper limit problem, where I noticed where I was doing that. Like if things were good in my business, I would pick a fight with Justin. Or if things were good with Justin, like usually my business was falling apart, be like, I need to throw everything I've done away. Like I need to start over from scratch. Like I would catastrophize. That's the word I was thinking of. Where can actually you have the great relationship, the awesome friends, and the thriving,
Beautiful business at the same time, that
Mhm.
coexist together. Like
Mhm.
I love what you were sharing about, when one thing felt stable or secure, you were looking for something to um, almost pick apart or like balance out with how difficult it felt to experience that safety.
Mhm.
I have so much compassion for that part of you, and I definitely have a lot of parts of me that feel wiggly in that moment. I used to call them prickly, but now they're very wiggly,
Yeah.
and they
Oh.
try to poke at things and try and figure out. And what I think is so beautiful, and I know you and I have a really like attuned sense to children and their understanding of safety. When we feel, so this is what I really want to highlight, when we feel safe is
Mhm.
when we feel comfortable to test our limits and boundaries. So
Mhm.
if you're going into catastrophizing, or that was like one of my favorite least favorite thinking traps, because there's so many thinking traps of that, or assumptions, right? Um, or looking at just the negative. So if we're going into a thinking trap, oftentimes it means because there is enough evidence there for us to feel safe in, so we're gonna play with what doesn't maybe feel safe. And we can fall into one of those traps, into a well, and then have parts of ourselves or reassurance from somebody that we trust to come sit with us.
Yeah.
And just to honor what's happening there. But I love that you were saying, like, when I feel safe enough is when I test those limits and boundaries, which is what we know about children. And we all have inner children inside of us.
Exactly. Yeah. Children will show you their full-fledged emotions with the people they feel safest with. And that was something I would always tell parents, that they're like, my child gets home and they melt down. I know it probably doesn't feel like it, but it's like the biggest compliment that they feel so safe to be all parts of themselves with you. I feel like that we could go into a whole episode on like how to be with children and navigating that. Let's jot that one down.
Yes, we're putting it there. It's sitting over here, and I definitely want to come back to how we support ourselves and feel like we're not living in a place of fear of abandonment or leaving, because that fear definitely resides within us about ourselves a lot of the time.
And so I hope that you guys took away from this episode, when you're in that fear of abandonment, or when you're in those sticky situations where things don't feel safe, that like a big key piece is can you start naming, different parts of you. I even at one point gave parts of myself like names. I had one named Trixie because she would try to trick me into believing all these things that were untrue, specifically in my friendships with women. If we can begin to like just give them some sort of like identity so that we can have conversations with them, it's so empowering.
To externalize them and then maybe give ourselves some extra love, or even putting the like butterfly hands, one hand on one shoulder, the other hand on the other, and going like back and forth slowly, just doing some of that resourcing. So when Trixie's up there and you're asking questions, or that part of you is being asked questions, you can sit there and ground a little bit in yourselves. And I'm hoping that's something that people might feel comfortable trying. And if not, that's okay too. Just being curious is enough, ladies.
Yes, that's a huge piece too. Like, ask more questions, be curious. If ever I'm looping in a negative self-talk spiral or loop, when you're obsessing, right? Like, I get questions in the DMs every single day. Like, I'm obsessing over, this is the thought I keep having. I keep replaying this. Like, we all know when we're having an obsessive thought for the most part. In that moment, can you just ask, how old is this part of me?
And immediately that sends some space between you and this part. And I think that's really the goodness that we're talking about today, is how do we have that space so that it doesn't feel enmeshed and we can have the curiosity increase. I call it level of curiosity. Sometimes my level of curiosity is hella low, like not feeling very curious, feeling pretty impatient today. And then sometimes just acknowledging that allows us to grow our curiosity towards that part of ourselves.
So use that as a tool. I feel like we laid out a few tools to use in this episode. So I hope that there's plenty of takeaways. Thank you so much, Erynn, for just having this conversation with me. I'm like, shoot, I feel like we could record forever and dive into this. Erynn and I have been really good friends for so many years now. I don't even know how many years it's been. But a lot of the work that we do together just as friends is really some deep shadow work and inner child healing, and having people in your world who are willing to have these conversations messy. It's so supportive and it's so helpful. And maybe you're the person who's meant to bring this conversation forth, because it's so healing for everyone.
Yeah, I honor that courage, and thank you so much for having me in this space. It is such an honor to be alongside you, beautiful sister, and I am looking forward to all of the conversations we continue to have. I hope this was supportive for folks, and really glad that you're all here.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. If you're tuning in, thank you so much. Please take a moment, if this episode was supportive, to like, share, review, rate. It helps other people access this podcast and join these kinds of conversations. This month, we have hit like top 100 charts in different parts of the world, which is so exciting as of this week. It's kind of like ebbing and flowing around the 100, mark. Thank you so much for just tuning in and downloading, but it would also be so supportive to rate and review and just share this with other people who you think would benefit from this work. So thank you all for tuning in. If you want to watch the video of this episode, you can follow me on YouTube YouTube. Also, check out my TikTok and Instagram, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me on Codependency Alchemy. Healing from codependency is a journey. Whether you're just starting out on your path or you've been working on your codependency for a while, know that you are not alone and that it is possible to create meaningful change in your life and relationships. And if you found this podcast helpful, I would love it if you would consider leaving an honest rating and review so that others can discover these valuable insights and tools as well. Find out how codependency might be impacting your life by taking the self-assessment, which you can find in the show notes below. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, you are worthy of healthy, fulfilling relationships, and you have the power to transform your codependency into sovereignty.